there is one more feature we could add to our controller. If we have a look at the articles controller destroy action, well, it responds to HTML and TurboStream, and if we have a look at the destroy.turbostream view, we can see that it's actually very small. So what would be amazing would be to be able to render the HTML directly from the controller and to avoid creating a view. So let's remove this view, delete it, and run our specs to see what happens. When we run our specs, we can see that the response status is no content. And this is because now our format TurboStream here doesn't render any view, so it renders nothing. So what we're going to do is we are going to render some HTML manually. So we are going to say render body, and then we can write our own HTML. So we can say TurboStream, the action is remove, the target is equal to, we'll write it right after that, and we can close the TurboStream tag, and the target is equal to action view record identifier DOM ID and the article here. And let's run our test again. And now our test passes, and of course we are rendering some HTML, and this HTML is exactly the same as the HTML that we had before. But it's a bit of a pain to have to write this HTML manually, and we already built a tag builder that's in charge of writing this kind of HTML. So what we're going to do is we are going to reuse our tag builder here. So we are going to create another method that we are going to call it TurboStream. Of course, we will put it at the right place right after that, but we're just going to create the method. And if we remember for the streams helper, we created this TurboStream method that created a new tag builder with the view context as an argument. And so within the controller, we can do exactly the same thing, but the argument that we pass here is not the instance of the controller itself, it's the view context that is accessible also from the controller. So here we go. Now what we are going to be able to write is TurboStream dot remove article, and if we run our specs, well, they still pass, so this is great. And what we're going to do now is to give a proper home for this TurboStream method. So what we're going to do is go in app controllers, TurboClone, streams, and we are going to create a new file that we're going to call TurboStreams tag builder.rb, and we're going to namespace it inside our TurboClone module. So TurboClone streams TurboStreams tag builder, and as a private method we are going to cut here this method and put it there. And of course now we have to somehow include this module within application controller, and to do this we are going to rely on the engine. And we already have an initializer for action controller base, and we are going to just add a line and say when action controller base loads, we are going to include this module. This module contains this method, and so this method will be available in every controller, and especially it will be available here. So let's run our tests to make sure that we didn't make any mistakes, and we didn't. Everything still works as expected. And there's one last thing that we can improve. Actually, this render body here seems a bit off. What we would like to have is a custom renderer for the TurboStream format. That way, if we wanted to add some options later to all the TurboStream HTML that is generated, we could do it. So what our goal here is to be able to write this, right? To create a TurboStream renderer to render this HTML. And if we have a look at the documentation on the Rails API, we can see that it is possible to register some custom renderers with the action controller renderers add method. So we can add a renderer, for example, CSV renderer. In our case, it will be a TurboStream renderer. We can pass it an object and some options, and it will do some computations on this. So I will link the documentation to this video, but in our case, our renderer that we want to create is much simpler. So what we want to do is to create in the engine a new renderer. So we are going to create a new initializer, and we're going to name it Turbo Renderer. And we're going to say that active support onload action controller. Then what we're going to do, we're going to register a new renderer. So renderers.add, and this renderer will be named TurboStream here, so that with this key, the render method will understand that it will have to use our custom renderer. And a renderer takes two things as an argument. So it takes a first option that is an object. And in our case, it's the TurboStream's HTML. So if we have a look here, we are passing HTML. And the second thing is some options, but we won't have any options in our case. And what we can do is simply return the TurboStream HTML that we passed as the first argument. So this is really like the most simple renderer we can have. It's just we are registering a renderer that is named TurboStream that receives some HTML and returns this same HTML. So it's actually exactly the same as once we had body here, but in the future we could customize this renderer to add some more options. And it seems also a bit cleaner to be able to render TurboStream that way. So if we launch our test again, everything is still green and everything still works as expected. So in this video, we learned how to include a module inside Action Controller Base to be able to add some methods to all the controllers. And we learned how to create a custom renderer and also expose it when Action Controller loads.